So my name is Isaac Coronado, and I'm interviewing
Vicky Adame.
for my History 178 class at Sacramento State University. It's currently 10:30 a.m. on Saturday, November 29th, 2025. Thank you for meeting with me today.
Oh, thanks.
Okay, so for the first question, what is the date and place of your birth?
I was born in Merced, California on December 14th. So my birthday's coming up.
Okay. And then what was the year?
1969.
1969. Okay. And then where did you grow up?
I grew up in Planada, California.
What was it like growing up in Planada?
It was a super small town at the time. I mean, there wasn't really anything. There was like supermarket, I mean, it wasn't that big, and a couple of smaller markets. Very agriculture focused. There was no high school in the town. So the high school was actually down the road, about 10 miles away in Lee Grand. And it was three small towns, including Planada, that fed into the high school. My graduating class was 70 students. So it was super small. But it was just really very small town, kind of, like families that had been there for generations, were still there. Obviously things have changed over the last few decades, but yeah, it was one of those towns where everybody kind of knew you. And it was very, the economy was very agriculture focused. So it was either farmers and farm workers.
And then how long did you live there?
I lived there until I was 18. And then I moved because I went off to college.
Mm-hmm.
I went to Fresno State. And I basically never returned after that. I just kept going.
Yeah, just kept going. Okay, and then next question. What were your mom and dad's names, and what did they do for a living growing up?
Okay, so I didn't know my dad, but I know he worked in agriculture, like a supervisory. His name was Rigoberto Rodriguez. My mom was Carmen Adame, now Garces, with her current married name. And she worked a bunch of different, labor, like manufacturing type jobs in different factories.
So where did your family come from? Like, where did your mom grow up? Where was she born?
So my mom was born here in California, in Merced as well. Dad was born in Mexico.
Mm-hmm.
So, and then grandparents obviously came from Mexico too. They migrated different times. My maternal grandmother came basically as a baby, so she didn't have a lot of recollection of living in Mexico. Because it was during, when her family left, it was during the time of the Mexican Revolution. They fled Chihuahua, which is one of the height of the revolution in Mexico. Yeah. My grandfather came when he was, I want to say he was 18. And he left the state of Durango in Mexico. And he came basically to work. He was recruited by, well, not recruited, but at the time the railroads were hiring Mexican labor. And that's how he ended up in the United States. And he worked what would be considered basically from the Midwest into the Mountain West region of the U.S. They would, from what he told me, they would follow like whenever there was a derailment. So they would be like cleanup for that. But he worked everywhere from just outside Chicago to Denver to Iowa. Just really incredible stories that he experienced until he finally settled in Planada, because he had a cousin there. And when his contract was finished with the railroad, he headed to California. And for 60 some odd years, that's where he stayed.
And that's when Grandma and then you?
Yeah.
And then do you know who was the first in your family to arrive here in the U.S.?
I want to say it was my grandfather, Fortunato Adame. He was the one that was working on the railroad. So, and that's how they got here. So it was between the two maternal grandparents that came, going back, like I said, to that just after the revolution. And I want to say my grandfather came, it's like 1920, 1921 to work, but he was already an adult. So.
Can you describe the house you grew up in?
Yeah. So it was. It had a huge backyard. That was one of the best things.
Mm-hmm.
But it was just basically, 3-bedroom house, 2-bath, living room. It had a patio area. Then just, like I said, the backyard was huge. It was humongous.
Mm-hmm.
Where we could do half the yard was a garden in the summertime with pretty much anything you can imagine. Running around and, had 3 dogs growing up. So it was a lot of adventures, a lot of fun.
So, along with the way their house grew up, what was your experience like growing up as well?
So I grew up pretty much as an only child. I was raised by my grandparents.
Mm-hmm.
But that also came with, it's fun because I was my grandfather's favorite because I was the first grandchild.
Mm-hmm.
And I beat out my cousin by literally 2 weeks. I don't think she ever forgave me for that.
Oh.
But it was fun because I was always with my grandfather. We called him Papa Nato because I asked him one time why he didn't like to be called grandfather or grandpa. He said because that was only for old people.
Oh.
But he was, eventually he bought a fig farm, or orchards, I should say.
Mm-hmm.
And any chance I got when I wasn't in school, I would be out there with him. And I just loved being out there, whether it was, during harvest or during like when he was, irrigating. I think that was the best time for me as a little kid.
Mm-hmm.
You're 7 or 8 and you get to play in the water and the mud. And I always had my little dog with me, Skippy. He's just a little black mutt. But, that was our thing. We'd always be out there. So that was always fun. And I think that was one of the ways that I ended up learning so much about agriculture. Because it was just something, I'd be around him listening, him dealing with, everything. And it just stuck. So even today, I can like literally go out somewhere and be like, identify any crop just by looking at it.
Like any
I'm
plant,
like,
any crop.
yeah, like, that's chili, right?
Yeah.
That's tomato, right? Oh, that's squash. And it's funny to see people's reactions like, how do you know that?
How do you know?
I grew up around agriculture, so.
And then growing up, did you have any responsibilities like as a child you had to do?
Not really. I mean, it wasn't like chores or anything like that.
Mm-hmm.
It was just more like, whatever you were told to do it.
Mm-hmm.
But there wasn't like specific chores that I was told to do. It was just mostly listen and behave or get in trouble.
Did you you weren't involved like in anything as a child like that had to do with agriculture? Anything like that?
Not officially. It was just by, being there.
Just being there.
Being there and just listening and hanging out and seeing everything.
Just watching what was going on?
Yeah, but I think it also, just being around agriculture at the time, it framed my life's view in terms of, because now I'm a journalist.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm a managing editor at a public radio station in Nevada. And in terms of covering immigration and undocumented immigrants,
Mm-hmm.
I saw a lot of that growing up because it's, that's something that's always been around.
Mm-hmm.
The immigrant farm workers, whether they are here with the proper documentation or not, I saw that firsthand. And I really think that shaped me and my worldview and just, seeing it firsthand of why people came and why they come to work.
Mm-hmm.
So, and again, that really shaped, like when I became a reporter, what I've covered. It was an easy gravitation to me to cover immigration and immigrants and underrepresented communities.
Okay. And along with growing up, where did you go to school? Like beginning with elementary school?
So elementary school was a K through 8. It was at Planada Elementary.
Mm-hmm.
And then from there we went to Lee Grant High School, which was down the road about 10 miles maybe? I don't even know if it was 10 miles.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, so that was high school for the 4 years.
So what was it like being in Planada for school? Like, what was it like?
It was one of those schools where, again, because it was such a small community, you pretty much went to school with the same people.
Like,
from
the whole time?
Kindergarten through 8th grade.
Mm-hmm.
So, and then there was a handful that you went on to high school with them. So you literally knew people for 13 years.
Mm.
You didn't, every now and then you'd get new students coming in either they moved there and they would stay. Sometimes they didn't. Sometimes they would just come in, for a couple of years, and then they'd move on.
Mm-hmm.
And there were you remember a few friends who their families moved, when they were like in 5th or 6th grade. So
Mm-hmm.
they weren't, they didn't finish school there with us. But yeah, but it was super tiny, so you knew everyone.
Everybody just knew each other.
You just knew everybody because again, small school, and everybody is going there. So I mean, maybe year by year you have a different class, but it's still like the same people
Mm-hmm.
going through.
And then what was high school like compared to elementary school?
Again, small high school, so there wasn't, and when I was there anyway, they didn't have a lot of clubs, a lot of different
Like activities.
I mean, they had sports and stuff, but
Mm-hmm.
it wasn't like the same clubs that you would get
like you see now.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And in bigger schools.
Mm-hmm.
So I think there was, it was very, I think at the time it was still very ag focused.
Mm-hmm.
That, they had the FFA and, a lot of the ag classes, which I did not take because that wasn't, my interest. We did not have school paper in high school, which for me was kind of a detriment because I knew when I was in high school I was going to be a journalist.
Mm-hmm.
So I, it's like, well,
you needed the paper.
I needed the paper. But I was fortunate because I had a great English teacher, Miss Hardy, who I had her for 3 years. And that was the other thing. Once you had one teacher, they usually taught either all 3 years of English, all 4 years of Spanish. So you ended up with the same teachers.
Mm-hmm.
So it wasn't like, oh, I'm going to have this teacher for this class. Da, da, da. We only had one foreign language. That was Spanish,
Mm-hmm.
which is like, not if you knew Spanish, it's like, okay, well, great,
Just easy A.
Yeah, exactly, take that. But it was pretty much just a very, like I said, small high school, for better or for worse. I think all the teachers would know you by then. So it was just a matter of how are we getting getting up to the next level. I don't think it was as intense as other high schools in certain classes. It could have been more so. So I think in some respects, I don't think that we were prepared for college in certain ways.
Because it was a smaller school.
It's a smaller school, and again, some of the teachers had been there for decades. I kid you not. It was like literally 30 years. So it was like, oh, this is how I've always done it. But like I said, I had a handful of really good teachers, which was great. Again, like my English teacher was amazing. I'm pretty sure saw something in my writing because she would always push me to rewrite. I hated it at the time.
Just to keep going.
Well, to rewrite it, you can do better. And looking back, I'm like, okay, you saw it, you knew I was a good writer, and that I could take it to the next level. So that prepared me for being a journalist, where I knew I had to do edits and rewrites. Yeah. So, yeah.
Would you say, or was there anything similar between high school and elementary school? The experience?
I mean, no, I think it's just, similar was just some of the people.
Yeah, just people around.
Yeah, the people that went.
Teachers.
Teachers not so much, but just the other students.
The other students.
My other classmates. Because, most of us had gone to, again, K through 8th.
And then to Lee Grand.
Went on to Lee Grand for high school, so it was the same. There was, obviously some new students because we were feeding in from Lee Grand, elementary, and then Plainsburg Elementary as well.
So all of them just put into together.
All came together. But the majority were the same people.
Okay. And then growing up while in school, was there what did you do for fun?
Just go to the movies, occasionally go to football games at the school. Back then the big thing was cruising. Like Friday, Saturday nights. It was mostly Saturday nights. Down Main Street, which isn't a thing anymore. So you literally just drive up and down.
Yeah.
Main Street, but people would just hang out too.
Like here in Merced, Main Street?
Yeah. And back then it was a two-way street.
Yeah.
It was just one way.
I know.
So, but yeah. So then, or you just, park off to the side and just, hang out, talk with your friends, meet new people and just see the different cars. Back then it was a lot of the mini pickups were in vogue. So it was like, okay, how how decked out are they, how painted, and how low are they, that type of thing. That was the big deal.
Everybody was just like in competition for
pretty
which
much.
ones were better.
And at the time, this was in the late 80s, the Air Force Base, Castle Air Force Base, was still active. This is before it was shut down, so there was you'd see a lot of the we called them the flyboys. The Air Force guys who would have there, because they would spend their money on their cars. So you'd have that mix as well, up and down, with their cars all painted and
like all decked out. You said
decked out completely.
And then for the next question, who would you say had the biggest influence in your life, and how?
I would say it had to be my grandfather, Papa Nato, because he was, he always encouraged me. It was never like, it wasn't a pressure like, oh, you have to go on to college, you have to go do this. It was like, whatever you want to do, I'm going to support you. It wasn't like, oh, you have to study this career. I think at one, they thought, okay, as long as you get a really good paying job, you're good. And I'm like, no, I'm going to college. And he was like, okay, we'll figure it out. We're going to get you there. And then it was just a matter of me like, well, what do I want to do? I think like most young people, at one point, I wanted to be a lawyer. Then I wanted to be a veterinarian. And one time I wanted to be a pharmacist. And
just a bunch of different things.
Realized pharmacist. I'm like, oh, that's too much science. No. And then finally it was like, no, I'm going to be a journalist. Initially, I was looking at being a photographer. And then I was like, oh, but I can write. But I can do everything. So it's like, okay, well, I'm going to work for a newspaper. And which I did. And then eventually that's changed where I now do public radio. But it's all still in the journalism field. So, but he was, I think the biggest influence, because it was just also just, hearing him talk and, seeing that he left home very young by himself, coming to a strange country. So I think even though he never said, look, if I can do it, you can do it. It was more like me seeing that, like, well, if he can do it, why can't I?
Just like thinking in your mind, like,
yeah, exactly. It's like, oh, you can do it. I can
it's possible.
It's possible. So, and I think that's just been one of those big ones of, I'm going to do this. And I think it's kind of proven too, because I'm like, lived so many places and traveled. And
then you're working over at the University in Nevada.
Yeah. University UNR.
And then also growing up, where did Mexican Americans go to church most often?
I think the majority of Mexican Americans were Catholic. So it's just, the local Catholic church.
Over in Planada?
Yeah, in Planada. Sometimes they'd go to Le Grand, depending if they didn't make it.
Didn't make it on time? Yeah.
Yeah. But, but again, I would say the majority, not all Mexican Americans. Because you would see some others who were like, say, maybe a different, evangelical religion. And then, as the years passed, you see more Mexican Americans just kind of growing out of Catholicism into like different religions.
Different ones.
Yeah. But at the time, I think, you'll see your mainstay is,
like Catholic. Yeah.
Yeah.
But did you see like any of them going like to the church here in Merced? Like, how was that?
I don't think they really, unless they missed, Mass, they would come. Yeah. But most of it was just there in Planada, because it was the easy one. It was just right there.
And if it was full, like Merced or Le Grand were more like backup options.
Yeah. You say? Yeah. If it was full, or if they didn't make it, or if like, oh, I didn't make this Mass, I'm gonna just go
to the next one,
to Le Grand on Saturday night, or I need to make it.
Like
I need
to
go to church, but I'm not gonna be able to go on Sunday, so I'm gonna go to one of the other ones.
So you'd say they just like find ways to make up for it?
Yeah.
On a different day of the week or a different time?
If they try, if they really, weren't that devout. Otherwise, it's like, oh, well, I'll be there next Sunday.
Yeah. Okay. And then, what would you consider to be the most important events during your lifetime?
So much has happened. It's been insane. I mean, really, looking back at it, it's just been, one of the first things I would say that was like a big world event would be when the space shuttle, the first one, Challenger, exploded. I was in high school. And when that word came through, I mean, remember, this is before internet,
Yeah,
before cell
so
phones.
nobody really knew
And
until
it somehow, someone in like the office had the radio on and it came across.
and everybody just heard.
Then the science professor had a TV and he put it on.
Mm-hmm.
And that's how that news came through. Because it was one of those moments, it's like, how is that possible?
Yeah.
How can this machine that's been going into space for just explode? And it was when the first teacher was on board and she died. And then the next big event, I would say, was when the Berlin Wall fell, when it came down. Because that was huge. Because, you know, growing up, it was all during, quote unquote, the Cold War. You know, there was like, Germany was split. It was East and West. And Russia, the USSR was still
a thing.
It wasn't Russia. It was the USSR.
The Soviet Union, right?
Yeah. And so, and they were like our enemies. And there was still always that threat. Like, oh my God, nuclear war.
Yeah.
It can happen at any moment. So you had that, right? But like I said, there was just so many things that happened. Because I also remember I had just started Fresno State and the Loma Prieta earthquake hit. The massive earthquake in the Bay Area where it brought down, the Bay Bridge came down. The Nimitz Freeway just pancaked. You know, and it was during the World Series.
Yeah, I remember hearing about that.
And so, you know, and a lot of people are like, wait, what? There was this major earthquake. I'm like, yeah, there was mass destruction. So then you had that. You had, again, the Berlin Wall coming down, which just changed, you know, a country that was literally split in two, what became one.
Became one, yeah.
And then, gosh, there's just so much. And then I guess the biggest event would be 9/11. You know, when the towers came down, when they were hit. That was like, literally is, again, one of those like, what?
Like everyone's just in shock. And
I was in shock. I was working at a newspaper, and it was like just a sense of just watching it on the news, seeing it on the news, and you're like, oh my God, how?
Because it was like our country was being attacked. So nobody knew what was going to happen next. Yeah. Or like,
and the fact that you went for I don't know how many days, you could literally look up into the sky and there was no airplanes, none. All flights were grounded. They were called back. I think there was one flight that was coming in like over the ocean, and there's no place for it to land. It got escorted in by fighter jets.
Like the military had to escort them.
And they escorted it in, ready that in case it was, you know, the potential for it to be taken over, they were going to shoot it down. But again, because it was over the ocean. There was no place for it to land. Like all the other planes are like, you need to divert and land here. You need to divert and land here. And just, you know, just remember hearing stories from friends saying like, yeah, they were stuck, you know, across the country and they rented a car.
To drive back
all the way back to California. So it was just that scenario. But again, it was just this eerie feeling when you can literally look up in the sky.
Nothing.
No airplanes.
Like you wouldn't even hear the sound.
Nothing, because there was no planes.
Yeah.
No commercial flights. So, you know, and then just that whole thing, that was, I think, you know, another turning point. Like suddenly, you know, it was the first time that the U.S. had been attacked on its own soil since Pearl Harbor. You know.
So really, no one knew what was coming next. Or like,
no one knew.
If we were actually going to go to war.
What's going to happen? I mean, eventually, quote unquote, we did go to war. But it took, what, 3 years?
Took a while.
Years.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, and the other big event was the election of 2000. When Bush and Gore were running. I literally went to bed. They had said Al Gore had won. Wake up, they're like, well, we got to recall that because no.
It was wrong.
The final votes weren't in. There was a problem with the hanging chads in Florida. Because when you vote now, you just color in the thing.
Yeah.
Back then, they used to have machines where you had to punch it, so it would like punch a hole through it. But sometimes the little piece of paper wouldn't completely fall; it would be hanging. So they literally had to go through all these ballots where that's what it was called, a hanging chad, to try and figure out, well, is that really the vote? because it's still kind of hanging in there.
Mm-hmm.
It's not clear whether they meant to vote for this person or not.
Yeah.
So there's a famous picture where there's an inspector like literally looking at this like this.
The paper hanging
to see is it count for so and so or not.
Yeah.
So and then we ended up with
Bush
being named after it went to the Supreme Court.
Mm-hmm.
So, but there's just been a lot. I mean, I think those are the things that really stand out for me
mm-hmm.
in terms of what's happened, over the last 30 years
mm-hmm.
or so. But it's between world events, state events, U.S. type events. Yeah, I mean, and then, those I think would be the biggest ones. Oh, and Hurricane Katrina.
Mm-hmm.
That was in
2005, right?
In New Orleans.
Mm-hmm.
Just the devastation and just watching those images on the news. It's like, the craziness of it and how many people were just left, to their own, figure it out, save yourself.
Yeah.
And how they just forgot people too.
Mm-hmm.
So it's just been a lot of
just different things that happen over time.
Major events have happened that have all had an influence on where we are today.
Yeah.
So, but yeah.
Would you say do you think it affected anyone like in the community, like around Planada, Merced at the time, really grand?
I mean, I think some of the world events, unless they had a local connection to it,
mm-hmm.
Had an effect. I think 9/11 affected everyone, especially if you travel.
Yeah.
By air.
Mm-hmm.
Because before 9/11,
mm-hmm.
you just went through the metal detector.
Mm-hmm.
There was nothing taking anything out of your bag, nothing taking your shoes off, none of that.
And now they do all
no
that.
limits on what you carry on. I mean, in terms of liquids.
Mm-hmm.
And if you were dropping someone off at the airport, you could go with them to the gate,
mm-hmm.
to the actual gate. You could go through security and wait for your person.
Mm-hmm.
Not a baggage claim. You literally went all the way to the gate
mm-hmm.
where the plane landed. Can't do that anymore unless you have a minor and you have a special permission.
Yeah.
But I think that's, has been the biggest effect
mm-hmm.
of, of those events.
Mm-hmm. And then for the next question, in your lifetime, what are you proudest of?
Personal? Like personal?
Yeah, like personal, family-wise, or is there anything you're proud of in the community?
So for me personally, what I'm most proud of is when I was a reporter up in Washington State, in Eastern Washington, in the Tri-Cities, I did a story on this young man. When we got the police report, it was initially deemed a suicide.
Mm-hmm.
But he had killed himself at a state park. In the days that followed, I got a tip from someone saying, "Hey, do you know why he did this?"
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, "No." Well, turns out the young man had just turned 21 and he was undocumented. His family had come from Mexico, and he was little, 3, 4, whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And he had spent his entire life here, gone to school. His family had put in their paperwork to get their green cards of permanent residency. His family all got approved right
mm-hmm.
before he killed himself. Got approved
mm-hmm.
for this. His was denied. Okay, and that's because they basically what I was told is immigration waited until he turned 21, because when you turn 21, then you have to apply on your own.
Mm-hmm.
When his family applied, they applied for everyone and their children, and he still qualified under that as being a child. So what happened? He felt my life's over. He was a very smart young man. He wanted to study. He wanted to go on to university, study computer engineering, computer science. He had been working at a fast food restaurant, and he was using an ITIN, independent taxpayer identification number, to work. And his bosses said, "Hey, we need you to bring in your social security card again. There's something wrong. We need to just verify it." Well, he didn't have a social. He just had the ITIN. So all these things just kind of happened. And for him, it was like, I have nothing left. He was seeing it that way. So he killed himself. I mean, I think, he shot himself in the chest, and from what I was told was that he did that so that his mom could see him one last time at the funeral.
Mm.
I was connected with his parents, and I was able to interview them, and this is how I found out this whole story.
Mm-hmm.
So I did the story on him, and as I was doing the story, I started learning that there was other young people in high school, similar situation, that they were undocumented, but they were straight A students, 4.0 and above. But their chances of going to university were pretty much non-existent because they didn't qualify for in-state tuition because of their status, even though they lived there. So what all the stories I ended up doing led to the Washington State Legislature passing a law that granted undocumented students in-state tuition and also allowed them to apply for in-state financial aid. Not federal, but the state financial aid. And that law continues today. It's been more than 20 years later. That law's still in effect. So the reporting I did on what was really a tragic situation turned into something really good. In the sense that other young people who are kind of faced with a similar situation would be able to find help.
Okay, good.
Yeah, so, again, very tragic situation. But because I was like reporting and I had really gotten into the community and gotten these tips, it turned into something that would help students for generations to come. So I think that's probably like the one thing for me, personal accomplishment, that really stands out.
Okay. Is there anything like you're proud of, like when considering like the community around like here, like Planada, LeGrand, Merced area, or Plainsburg?
You know what? I've been gone from the community for so long because once I went to Fresno State, I started working and I just started moving around and living different places. Ended up getting my master's in New York, grad school there. And yeah, so I haven't really stayed in touch with what's going on in the community.
Okay.
So.
Okay. Are there any pieces of advice you can give, like to any like Mexican American students like today?
Yeah, just follow your dreams. Don't let anyone tell you you can't do this or that's impossible. If someone's gonna tell you, oh, you're crazy, what are you thinking? Don't listen to them. Go for it. If it's something you want to do and something you believe in, do it. Because at the end of the day, you don't want the regret of 10, 20, 30 years down the road saying, oh, I should have at least tried. You can't go back in time. So it's better to try it. If it doesn't work out, then you move on. There's no harm, there's no shame in trying something that doesn't work. Don't see it as a failure. See it as, you know what? I tried it. It turns out, I found out I really don't like that. I don't want to do that. But I think that whole thing is, you learn, you fail, but you also learn more about yourself and what truly matters to you. Take the trip. Go somewhere. Don't be afraid to try new things. And don't ever let anyone tell you, no, you can't do it. Or what are you thinking? You're crazy. Why do you want to go there? If you believe that it's something you want to do, if you believe in yourself, go. Take the trip. Eat the dinner. Go for it. Meet new people. And that's the biggest thing. Meet new people. Really expand your horizon beyond your small circle. Because I could tell you right now, I have friends in so many states, in different countries, and it's not just from like traveling and just talking to strangers. I know when you're little, you're not supposed to talk to strangers.
Yeah.
But as you get older, talk to strangers. You will be amazed at what you learn.
And then for our final question, is there anything else you would like to add on? Like to anything you talked about today in the interview?
No, I think a lot of it, especially when it comes to the history of Mexican Americans and Mexicans in the U.S., it's not told. History is always told from the perspective of the person telling it.
Yeah,
exactly. Well,
like my professor,
right?
she even told us about that. Yeah.
You need to, dig, find out, and you'd be amazed at some of the things that Mexicans have done, and just the country in general. the history, you know, whether it's the Southwest or just, you know, all Western U.S. You know, there's such a rich history, especially in California. Just, it's amazing. So just, you know, be curious and just
do your own research.
Do your own research and talk to people, and you'd be amazed. You know, like going back to history, it's like if you know the history of like the Brown versus School Board, which led to desegregation, that came about because of a not so well known case involving Mexican American school children in Orange County, California. It was Mendez versus Westminster. The governor at the time would go on, Earl Warren, would go on to be the Supreme Court Justice who oversaw Brown. So there was a basis there that all came from Mexican Americans. So, but yeah.
All right, and it looks like that's all the questions. So thank you for the interview today.
Of course, thank you.